All right, we are back with our third conversation celebrating the 2025 UTMB World Series. Before we get started, though, quick thanks to our partners, NAC, Norda, Goreware, and Raid for making all of this possible, keeping the lights on. Do us a solid, head over to the show notes of this episode, check out their products, make a purchase, helps, again, keep the lights on here. Joined by someone who I have wanted to interview in person for a while now, Mr. Ben Dhiman. Ben, how are you doing today?
Good, Finn. It's good to be here.
By the way, full transparency, this is our second attempt. We got interrupted by a European espresso machine, thankfully at the very beginning of the conversation. So weird asking that again. I think there's a lot of backstory to get into here because if we talk about UTMB, the expiration date is a week from now. Let's talk about your 20s. Because before you were a pro athlete, you had this extended, like decade-long self-education.
A nomad.
You were, what was it like being a nomad?
I mean, it's hard. It's a hard life, but it was my choosing. I wasn't really content anywhere to stay long in any certain spot, so I wound up moving around a lot. But it was sort of it was me following some inner voice, which for better or worse leads me here. But the whole time it was sort of an obsession with cool places. I mean, it wasn't a down and out story. It was mostly a story of me interested in getting to know awesome places in nature. And it's through hiking that kind of took me around the country and led me to other places. But at the end of the day, like, I have no regrets about my 20s.
I mean, you were 20 years old. You were a D1 soccer player at a legit school, Emory College, and
it's a D3.
D3,
sorry.
Okay. Still,
yeah, it's not quite as
still
good.
great academically.
Yeah, academically,
top brass.
Yes.
And you decide to opt out.
Right. Yeah,
what's driving that.
It sort of all came unraveled with a knee injury. I mean, I'd had some difficulties with a coach for the first time in my life. I was always an athlete who just adored being told what to do. And somehow, somewhere along the line, I couldn't see eye to eye with my coach there. And I think my play was starting to suffer, and I was getting distracted into other domains of college life. And I also got injured at the same time. And I sort of took that injury as like a sign, like, this is it. Like, it's all unraveling. It's not just the knee. It's the whole life. Is this whole path that you're on is now, it's all up for grabs. And that was a really horrible call to ring my dad and say, hey, I'm going to not go back next semester. And his first thought is, he's failing. This is not good. I'm like, I'm not failing. Grades are fine, but I can't do this. Like, I got to figure out what to do. He's like, well, what are you going to do? Well, I worked at Chipotle for 6 months, saved enough dough to get on the Appalachian Trail, and the rest is history.
What do you pick up from the thru hiking scene that you take with you now?
Well, I mean, through hiking, it was the path. You know, you follow the path and then you just stay on it, because all of the connections, especially the Appalachian Trail, which is quite a social place compared to some of the Western trails, I wound up meeting cool people. And one of my best friends on the trail lives in Montana. So he's the one that kind of inspired me to head west in that direction. And like, this sort of randomization of the people that you meet in the woods is fantastic, because you don't know, like, you're all out there at different times, moving at different paces. And so when you can actually really get along, I mean, you get along with a lot of people, but there's a way to speak through all of the bullshit to people out there. And I sort of connected with people in ways that the travel suggestions, the ideas of going to other places stuck in my head and gave me other concepts.
I got to tell you a story about my own thru hiking experience. So I did the trail in 2014, and I think we all approach it from different vantage points. For me, for whatever reason, we were in the internet era, but we weren't as like dialed into social media. And so my own kind of conceptions of what it was going to be weren't really challenged. And I thought it was going to be sort of this like human versus wilderness experience. Like I said, it's a very social trail, but I also thought everyone out there was going to be super motivated to like kind of get the best out of themselves physically and to be there to sort of like spiritually purify themselves. And I was a little disenchanted because the majority of the scene that I encountered,
cigarettes.
Yeah, it was a party. It was kind of an extension of college. And I ended up finishing the trail with like a massive chip on my shoulder.
Oh, really?
Well, just in the sense that like I thought that I was going to go to this place that was like a sanctuary from what I was like trying to get away from in like the college dorms and like off-campus partying scene, and get to a place where people are like civic, wilderness minded, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't and again, maybe I just met the wrong people. But I didn't
It's too
quite
bad
find
we
it.
didn't meet out there, frankly.
Dude.
Because I was listening on my little iPod shuffle. I'd put like Thoreau, Walden Pond on there. I was all about developing. I was reading Walt Whitman. I was all into it. I was trying to develop a deep connection with nature. I was trying to foster it, not try to do it. It was already there. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be present. And but I avoided whenever I never stayed in shelters. I think that's key as well, is to sort of avoid the shelter style and always look for a beautiful place to camp. That was what I was into. So I mean, there are people out there who are keen on that, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people traveling with a handle of vodka as well.
I guess one of the things that I'm impressed by is just that you had the discipline to keep this sort of self-education quest dialed in for 10 years. Like you left college and like, but you sort of had this map.
I think maybe
you were looking for something. What were you looking for?
I think in retrospect, it's cleaner than it actually was. I was pretty lost, but I was lost, but I couldn't be bothered to like waste my time really. Like I thought working was a waste of time, but it's just that you have to work enough so that you can be free. So those were the parts that I really loathed, was like having to work like jobs that aren't very interesting. But there's always this carrot dangling. Like if you can just make $5,000, you can just pick up your backpack, throw the thumb out, get to the trailhead and get lost. But it was little things, it was always like concrete things. Like it was, after because I did finish my studies. I finished in Montana, at Montana State University. But after that, I did the Continental Divide Trail, 2016. And then 2017, I did the Hayduke. And that was when I first started dabbling in trail races as well.
Okay.
And then in 2018, I went to the Himalaya. But in between, but also after the Appalachian Trail, I did like some more random traveling, less trail adjacent. But that prospect of getting to hit the trail again was what saw me through.
When the dust settles on all this, what is the philosophy that you arrive at?
I don't know, frankly. Like I think it's too much. I don't think we can sum these big things up into nice square statements. I was just doing me, man. That's it.
Because I think for me, I want to live close to nature. I want to be close to people that are self-improving. And I want to be pro-social in the sense that there's a community that I want to be around and I want to be doing my best to contribute to it. Like when I left the AT, that's what I got from it.
You're a very socially responsible person. That's impressive.
I think I'm not, but I aspire to it.
Yeah.
I think it has to be on the surface for me.
I felt like I was a selfish little demon. Like I was just really self-interested in all that. Like, especially looking at it from the perspective, I mean, you have a family now as well, but once you have a family, when you start looking at it that way, I sort of see myself as somebody who was just completely obsessed with his own delusions. And I wouldn't necessarily think that that's a good thing for everybody to do. But it was important for me. And I think like generally, those, whether they were delusions of grandeur or like true, because it's really hard to tell. Like, is UTMB a delusion? Is it, or is it really the thing that you've built up in your own mind? And it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's the same thing. We have to have a thing to chase. We have to have it. So on through hikes, it's very simple because you can just move on day-to-day patterns like that. But in the greater scheme of things, just goal-oriented lifestyle. If you're looking for philosophy, that's it. Yeah. It's just goal-oriented lifestyle.
I was going to say that you left a pretty utopic version of the way life could be led, like living on that like commune in Kauai, or sort of always looking for the next through hike. Like that's pretty utopic. But then I wonder, like, how fringe is what we're doing now? You know, like, is this even more crazy? Is this lifestyle of like trying to be someone who is really good at circumnavigating an amazing mountain?
It's pretty niche.
Like, is that, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like we're just speaking about different arenas. Like when I was in Hawaii, it was really challenging to leave. I developed this really deep connection with being there, but at the same time, I didn't want to be another person living and taking from Hawaii. Like when you're on an island, you realize that resources are finite. It's something you don't when you're not on an island, you see it. And like it's a small place, and I felt it was my time to leave. And I think it's important in general to turn the page on a lot of things in life. But when you're young, it's really easy, pick up and leave, get out of there.
You were telling me offline that you were talking to an athlete who's in their early 20s, and they're probably seeing you and other people in the sport, and they're thinking like, okay, this is where like I invest. And you were saying something interesting to me. You were like, no, you needed your 20s to get to this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people have gotten into trail running in very interesting ways. I'm not alone in that respect at all. But whether or not the sport becomes extremely professional is going to dictate a lot of that, because if it's a sport where you need 8-10 years of development in order to make it on a race like UTMB, then it's going to be essential that you're involved in your early 20s. But I would also find that a bit sad as well, because athlete lifestyle is boring, man, and there's not a whole lot to draw out of it besides, I don't know, like you get fitness, you learn like the little ups and downs, but it's quite it's a very narrow corridor.
Dude, I gotta read this quote from your blog, because it ties in here. You say, "Doers cannot afford to be thinkers, and the sporting life doesn't support errant wanderings of the intellect. We are structured and dutiful and severe. I don't have time to ruminate anymore. I don't dwell."
Sorry for that. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry for all the big words in there. That's must be a pain to read. No, it's true. I mean, it's a very wake up and do this, carry water, haul rocks sort of deal. So there is a certain aspect to that where, I don't know, like there's growth to be had, but it's at the end of the day, don't think, just run. That's the best thing you can do in races and training. Don't think, just run. I tell myself that frequently, because I find that absorbing myself into the act of running is where I'm actually at my best, in the sport. But then at the same time, this philosophy of just going into running and not thinking, it sort of sets up your blinders in a way where you're kind of not realizing what else is going on.
Not a cerebral sport for you right now.
No, it is. I mean, I that's why I still write. That's why I try to get something out of this. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it might sound like I'm jaded, but I absolutely love it. And because becoming absorbed in a thing and losing perspective is the best place to be. This is the dream, right? Because then you're not thinking about time or obligations or anything beyond the present moment. So in a sense, it's enlightenment, but I'm far from enlightened. It's like, but that is what people chase. And enlightenment is just a sense of presence where nothing else matters. So while it's very limiting in what it does, it is at the same time, it's giving me a lot of inner peace. I love what I do.
Yeah. Do you feel more at peace right now than you were at the same time last year?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
I think every year people think that they're fitter and better and more ready for UTMB, but I am more ready for UTMB. But it's mostly just, I would say, last year, for example, if I had to study my build up, if I just objectively look at what happened, I'd say that I did too much in training. I was just too cooked, Even if it didn't feel like it, race week, I had good legs, was ready to go, very hungry. It's really easy to overdo it in your build up for UTMB. So I've undergone a transition this year to reel it in, to try to do a bit less, That way, I'll have access to more of myself when the time is there.
Was the work you're doing though, was it intuitive, or were you saying to yourself, I need to do more? Like, were
Yeah.
you just happily doing a lot, or was it like, no, there's like I have a self mandate to go out and do more?
It was a lot of the latter. A lot of this. The watch only says you did 2,500 meters of climbing today. You need to do 3. It's very ambiguous to just chase numbers like that. But it felt like the more I did, the better off I would be. That's just not the case, I don't think. And you can get away with it on certain races, and there's certainly something to be said with loading it up, really going after high volume. But you've got to land the ship eventually, man. And it can be quite challenging to build the training up to a place where then you've got to get yourself ready for the race all of a sudden. It seems like it's just training for training's sake as opposed to training for the race. So that's been a piece I've been playing with this year. But that's coming from also a place of confidence and security with my own ability. Because I think there's also this tendency to do a lot if you're trying to overcompensate for something. But I've seen that I do better when I'm just kind of in a more relaxed position coming into races.
At the end of last year, or maybe it was, yeah, I think it was the end of last year, you said that your goal was to sort of close the gap between yourself and the very, very top of the sport.
Yeah.
What's left there? Do you feel like you closed it?
I don't know. That's going to be fun to watch next week.
So Lavredo wasn't enough. Lavredo wasn't enough.
I don't think we had a dense enough field. I ran time trial basically. I didn't have anybody to push me into the stratosphere there. I had like access to a lot, and I'm really proud of what I did. But I think with the right field, we could just destroy that time. Not destroy. I mean, I think there's like maybe 5 to 10 minutes on there that could be taken. At the end of the day, though, this is a sport where we're competitive with other people, but we have to come back to this concept of your own race and your own, like, you versus you. So we'll see next week if I've closed the gap. But I think even at the end of that, there'll be questions, right? In order to really do that, you've got to do it multiple times,
Because I'm thinking back to the race. Would it have been Les Templiers a year or two ago?
Les Templiers.
Les Templiers. Les Templiers.
Templiers. If you need a French tutor, I'm here for you.
Dude, I need you. But you were on the podium, right? And
yes.
It was
I got smoked, but yeah, I was on the podium.
Poopy and Albin were there, right? On that day, if you reflect back on that day, the delta between you guys, what do you suspect Francesco was doing, Jonathan was doing, that maybe you're now doing as a result?
Yeah, they had another level that day, but I would love to just redo that race with the same group. It would be really fun to watch, because I know just based off my own abilities that I've improved a lot in those categories where I was lacking there. But I'd say they'd both had a lot more race experience, like especially faster race experience than me. I don't think I'd run a competitive marathon or 50K or anything at that point. I'd only run longer stuff. So that race in particular, where you've got to, I think John even said, you got to pace that one like your life depends on it. You cannot mess around. And I was sort of just trying my best, but I was missing some basic qualities that they had there. I just didn't have the speed endurance. But that's something I've worked really hard on improving since.
Is there anything you can do in training besides B and C races to get that experience or to work? Like, what is there an equivalent of like free throws?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, you can accumulate more fast kilometers, and it's an
expensive adaptation to maintain, though.
You can, yeah, but you don't. It doesn't have to be screaming fast. But you have to think about how it feels. Often, I get lost in looking at individual disciplines in the trail versus thinking about how they actually work together. And to give an example, in the Templiers, that was 2023, I believe. Yes, 2023 that I ran that. So I lost Albin pretty early. He made a very smart move on a descent, got ahead of the group on a technical single track and made a gap, and we just couldn't bring him back. And then I ran with Francesco for a while. And I think after 40K or so, so after a marathon, there's a good honest uphill. I was on him the whole time. But as soon as it went from uphill to flat, he could keep up that same relative speed. And I couldn't. Even though on the uphill I was there, I couldn't do it. And it seemed to me at the time, I was like, man, he's just run more fast kilometers. He's just more ready to run at those required paces. But what it is as well is that muscle tension going between up and flat. So what I've been working on, like in that specific example, I don't forget those kind of moments, because those are teaching moments. You have to hold on to them and do something with them. So often in training, I realize like, hey, actually you have the top ability on the uphill, but what you're missing is what we say in French is the la relance. That's like when it goes flat. It's like you've been climbing, then it goes flat. And that's where you got to work. So I kind of keep that in my mind and loop it. And during training sessions, I'll just test myself. How is it when you go fast there off the top of the climb? And so I think those kind of recurring moments where you can actually self-analyze and look for your weaknesses, you can bring those into your training regimen. It's not something you have to structure and do every day, but on certain sessions, it should live in your head such that you can work on it.
We were just talking with your teammate Tom Evans about precisely how multidisciplinary this event is. And there's a lot of attributes at play. That said, because you're talking about it kind of now, if you were forced to max out an attribute for this race, uphill power, fatigue resistance, downhill speed, like what are you picking based on your studies, your research on this course?
Max out one. You just gotta, it's sort of a cheat code, but you just max out the fatigue resistance. Then you'd be fine. Because if you just don't get tired, then you'd be fine. But if you were just looking at, if we were actually talking about just vertical, like, or flat or whatever, I'd say if you could just keep up your speed on all the downhills, you'd be fine. You could do a really good time. I think that's like it's super important.
Yeah.
And that's something I've noticed with myself I have to continue to improve on, because I feel really confident on my uphill ability. And even my block in UTMB, before Lavredo, I was running a lot. UTMB, I'm hiking a lot more. And that's been like the focus, is get the hiking legs together. Get into that hike all day shape. And it's really pleasant once you can do that. And you're like, hey, you can just walk as fast as people run. That's how I got into the sport too, just walking as fast as people run. Like, this isn't much of a sport if you can walk as fast as people. But at the same time, in a race like UTMB, you cannot run every step of the uphill. It's silly. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick my downhill and fatigue resistance. But that's just because for me, I already feel really good with my uphill ability.
What have you learned about sort of your character, your mental state deep into these races, like when you really have to push?
Well, last year I was really not happy with the way I performed in general. I was up on this really flat plateau. I just didn't have it when it counted several times. And my theme going into this year was you finish every race strong. Just like, it's a basic principle, but it's super important, and that's what makes the big difference. So you've got to be cutthroat when it's the moment. And those patterns, it's funny how it's just an idea like that, and then put into practice several times can give you access to it all of a sudden. Like, a thing that was really difficult to access is now not that hard to get to. And it has nothing to do with your physical stage. It's just a neural pathway. It's just a really cut the pain, go really hard, shut it all out, and run, So that's been something interesting I've noticed with myself this year, is the development of that.
How do you do that? Is it just like some woo-woo self-talk thing?
I don't know. You just do it. Like, I go a bit crazy. Like, I become very hard on myself. But I used to do that when I was even through hiking sometimes too. I would just go lights out on some of these climbs. I would lose grasp of where I was and just attack the climb and never give up. But everybody knows the feeling of hard effort. What's hard though is to get into that state once you're destroyed.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. I think also it's just been a benefit of good training for several years now where I'm actually fit enough to get access to it as well. Because as much as I say it's a mental thing, it's probably a scientist to come around and say, no, you've developed something in your physiology with your legs. You've got access to power now at the end of races.
I do want to ask a couple questions about this year's UTMB.
Mm.
Is this the year that we see a Peloton go sub 20?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think this is the year, frankly. I don't think we have enough. We don't have enough. We still don't know what makes a good UTMB runner. You see how many people shoot and miss every year. So I think we need to figure that out first, is really how to get that dialed in. And I sometimes I wonder if it was just UTMB was in the same time of Western, if we would just see that happen, if it's just a matter of freshness, because this late season stuff, I think there's attrition before the race even starts. We see that frequently. I mean, we've seen a lot of names not being able to get there to the start line. So I wonder if maybe we just had that, just a timing thing, if we would see a change. But my speculation is we don't have it figured out yet.
Is having Lavredo in your legs a disadvantage for this?
Not to me.
Okay.
I think it's good. Yeah, that's why I chose it. It's because I knew I was going to spend a little training camp there. I knew I was going to be an alpine environment. I knew I was going to be running in the mountains. I knew that there would be downstream positive effects of that training block and that race. And then obviously doing a good result is really helpful for the head.
Can you talk about the sugar epidemic in our sport?
The sugar epidemic.
I want to hear, for anyone that doesn't listen to your pod, they need to hear you riff about the sugar epidemic.
What like, to paraphrase, what would you say I said in general? Because that is a stream of consciousness podcast. I cannot be held accountable for everything I say on there.
I think you were frustrated, or maybe appalled is the right word, or something, about how much gravitation there's been towards just like extremely high carbohydrate intake.
Yeah.
And, not questioning how much you're actually oxidizing out there, all that kind of stuff, and where you sit in terms of all that. Like,
yeah.
You sound like a reasonable carb fueler.
I am not a fan of excess for excess sake. Okay. Like, I'm not an eco warrior, but I don't think we should be just lost to the wind with this trend. Like, we need to have just a touch of common sense. That's it. Right. If it's going out for a 90-minute run, you don't need to eat anything, okay? There's no reason to eat anything unless you haven't ate that day or something, or you haven't ate your breakfast and you want to have something while you're running to start your day. But when it comes down to it, there's the specificity of it doesn't have to be all the time. So I get frustrated when I see people talking about just smashing absurd amounts of carbs on relatively short runs. That's my pet peeve. Shorter run, moderate intensity, a lot of carbs. No, we don't need that, right? What you need to do is practice your race nutrition when those runs come around. And yeah, you can try to stress your gut out from time to time, but it doesn't need to be a daily exercise and trying to count as, because if you look at it, I even told my wife the other day, I finished one of the long runs for UTMB, and I said, guess how many, the equivalent of how many Coca-Colas I drank today. And she's like, I don't know, 3? And I was like, no, 12. 12 over 4 hours. And that's not even high. That's a pretty standard number these days. So we need to just be a bit careful with that. Excess is in general, there's limits to all that. And most people find out the hard way that's eventually untenable.
What is it going to look like for you on race day?
It's closer to shooting around 80 grams per hour and then trying to time stuff right, mix in solids, and make sure my hydration is good.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know for a fact that if you're going to make an attack late in a race, it's got to be 100% fueled by sugar. So in certain moments, and Killian has talked about that too, is in certain moments you got to throw everything you can into the furnace. You got to give it as much fuel as you can. But that shouldn't be from the gun. It's got to be thinking about where that intensity is placed. In general as well, look, it's a 100-mile race. It's 20 hours of effort. And you have to respect that the body is not gonna it's not gonna put up with that for 20 hours. It's only gonna put up with that for short cycles and different times. And in between, you've got to be treating it well. Because once the stomach rebels, it's over. That was me last year. It's over, man. Like when you can't do anything but vomit, the game is done. And that is the last place you want to be when you're like, if I just ate less, I would have been fine. Would have been okay. Maybe I wouldn't have been with Vincent, who was on an amazing day, but I would have been in the mix, you know? And I know that if I'm in the mix, I'll be all right.
I know you do a lot of your training with Gautier.
Yeah.
In addition to him, who among your peers do you see as influences? Like you're studying their training, their approach, you're taking notes, you admire it. To what extent are you are you a fan of the people around you following their stuff? You know what I mean? And if you're not, that's fine.
Yeah, honestly, I'm curious. I'm always curious to see what people are doing. And I'm also very quick to judge people on what they're doing. But at the same time, I like to take an assessment. If you look at somebody coming into a big race, like obviously before Western, I tried to like just see what people are on Strava and see what they did, and then you can kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe like that's too much. Is that excessive? Or like you looked at Caleb's and you're like, just a straight line of 100-mile weeks. You're like, well, like he's ready to run 100 miles at least, so. Who knows? But there's not a lot of flashy workouts and stuff. So you don't necessarily, I'm actually more suspect of people dropping flashy workouts than I am people just doing solid work. Because at the end of the day, I think dumping too much fitness into your workouts, it has a really bad effect on your racing. I've been there before. Like last year, I was trying to flash time trials and stuff before races and thinking I'm a cyclist. I'm not, we're not, we pay bigger consequences for those efforts. And so, I'm generally suspect of people who are in really good shape before races than people who are sort of on.
Yeah, do you have because I know it sounds like between last year and this year, the focus has been refinement. Do you have I know it's hard to estimate, but do you have a sense of like this time around, what percentage of your training is counterproductive?
Some percent, yeah, still some percent. Like today, I didn't have to spend 4.5 hours out there, but you know what it is when you look at the map and you're like, oh yeah, that looks good, and then it's not at all what it looks like on the map. Like today, I did the Col de Bonhomme and the Croix de Bonhomme, and then I went up on this ridge because they said there was a trail, and it was a good trail for like a bit, and then it was just a field of rocks for a while, and so I'm just boulder hopping for several hours. And, well, I mean, we're a week away. I'm like, you could just be at home resting. Like, you don't need to be doing this. But at the same time, might as well try to enjoy it because it was beautiful. So there's always like some hours, some climbing, some sessions where I dip in maybe a bit more than I need to. But I don't think we're far off from where we could be. And I think it's actually possible to try to integrate a concept of doing more into a concept of doing less by continuing to play with the polarization a bit. So that'd be something I'm curious about, is to say, well, maybe we could try to do some longer sessions than I did this year, but then kind of equalize that out with more off days completely. But this is like a really tough challenge to know. Is it better to just log steady work every day of the week, or is it better to just kind of backload or front load the week and have these spikes in training load and charge? And in general, I would suspect that it's all going to be about the same. It's going to kind of play out the same over a long enough horizon, right? But each athlete is a bit different. And I think also kind of playing with novelty is important in your training every year, is to come back to staples, but at the same time, play around with things that are new.
When you think about the off season, I know we're getting away from UTMB, but from a staple standpoint, do you feel like skimo, getting vert and skimo is like, you cannot, that's mission critical?
It's hard to beat.
It seems like everyone's doing it.
I've been doing it for 3 years now, but even when I was like, actually I had a really great job when I was in Montana. I was a cross-country ski guide in Yellowstone, and like we didn't have trail. I broke trail every day on like these old Norwegian skis, like not fancy equipment. And Yellowstone in winter, I mean, the snow, we can get several feet in a day, and I'm out there breaking trail, breaking trail, breaking trail. But I remember also living at altitude in Canyon Village there. I remember leaving that in the spring every year and having insane legs, just so strong. So it's hard to beat a sport where you can still be on your feet, right? It's not cycling. You're still on your own feet, and you're under the muscular stress and the aerobic stress and the respiratory stress. So to me, yes, skimo is critical in my system for performing in ultras.
Coming back to UTMB, terrain-wise, what do you think is the most challenging part of this course?
Well, I'd say generally it's just the long autonomy sections. You know, you have 50 kilometers between Les Contamines and Courmayeur where you don't see your crew, and then again right off of that, just you're swinging through, and you've got another 45 kilometers until you get to Champex-Lac to see your crew. So those long sections, and people can say whatever they want about UTMB, but you cannot discount them on it forcing runners to be strong away from their crew. Like I think this is actually a really cool part of UTMB. Maybe a little underlooked is that you don't have massive support like you might in some of the other big races. You've gotta be autonomous through the night and then into the long morning.
You feel ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going back to why I've felt like obviously I haven't got it right 2 years in a row, but I feel like the course really does align with me in a lot of ways as a runner, because part of my background has been autonomy, like just having everything with me and going. Like I really appreciate that. So I look forward to those sections, but it's also a function of not getting lost in the pacing, the energy, and the noise, and just settling in and focusing on the important things, taking care of yourself.
What are you reading right now?
I got Infinite Jest, David Foster Wallace.
Okay.
I'm 29% of the way through.
That's an ultra.
Yeah, that's an ultra.
Is that a good book?
It is.
It's a book I see on people's like coffee tables.
I know. Yeah. I was hesitant. I mean, I picked it up, I think, once before when I was in Indonesia or something, at a hostel, but I never, yeah, I kind of like was hesitant to go into it because I like to finish a book I start. I don't always, but I like to. And it's moving. I mean, it's not a hard book, but it's a bit slow here and there. But then it's also really great here. And it's Infinite Jest. You know, you're bobbing in and out of periods of brilliance, punctuated by some boring stuff. And yeah.
What does reading fiction do for you? What do you get out of it?
I mean, I've always been a student of language, but more so, I'm always impressed by the human imagination. I love it. It's one thing to have a good vocabulary, and it's another to give people these images that they can never forget.
Did you ever find the journal from the Himalayas?
No, it's gone.
Was that your book?
Maybe there was a book in it. Yeah, there was a book in it. It had a lot.
That was the open question in that interview you had, Exodus from the Riff Raff. You were still looking for the journal.
Okay. Yeah, no,
it was kind of left on a cliffhanger.
It's gone, man. Yeah. Well, you got to write a new one, huh? You just got to keep working the story, and I mean, it's all in there somewhere. The problem is that to have written like that, so just to fill people in, it was a journal that I carried when I did the Great Himalayan Trail across Nepal, and I was by myself. So, and you don't meet a lot of people who are speaking English outside of the tourist tracks, which you kind of only intersect with on that trek. So I had a lot of time in the evenings to write, and so I was writing about what I was doing, but I was also writing everything about sort of all of the flashbacks of memory that you get when you're hiking and you're just totally disconnected. You have this beautiful globe in your head of your own life, and you can just move it around and go wherever you want, and then just kind of zoom in, and live there for a while, and then zoom out and go around. So with that kind of clarity and time, I journaled incessantly. And then when I finished the trek and I was in Kathmandu, I got sick, really sick, and over 3-4 days was just like bedridden and stuff. But I had gone out to different cafes. I was in a fever haze dream, and when it finally passed, I couldn't find the journal, and I tried to retrace my steps around Kathmandu. I asked everybody, and it's gone.
Is it easy for you to focus?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
And you? No, it's hard.
I mean, I don't know. One of the, just like studying all the interviews that you've been in and listening to your show and reading your writing. Um, it seems like it's easy for you to get into flow
Mm.
and to stay with an idea.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And
Thanks.
again, a lot of the things that I admire are things that I don't have in myself.
Okay.
And
All right.
that's why when I say I have this philosophy,
But what do you think it is? Is it something you had and then lost, or is it something you've always been looking for?
always looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're hiking, how is it? Is your mind running a lot when you're hiking?
No, I can get it there.
Yeah.
That's why I was telling you offline that that's the source.
Okay.
You got a taste of it.
Right.
Um, anyways, just
Yeah, but there's something there, like maybe that's one way for you to focus is just to move. I don't know if you.
It
But
seems like it can happen for you in multiple environments, though, and with multiple activities. Like you can do it through writing, through running.
yeah,
It's impressive.
thank you. But my advice in general is to people, it's fine to dedicate some long runs to listening to stuff, but I really think it's good to not listen on some of the runs during the week, especially if you've got busy stuff going on. If you're working a job, getting off and going running, you don't need to listen. What you need is to not listen because you need your mind to digest what's going on. And like the listening and just devoting your attention to the Singletrack podcast and stuff while you're running is like, no, you should just let it go, jog, and then when you're done, listen to stuff. Or if you've got a long run, then you can plan it and look forward to it. We were just reminiscing about like the joy of looking forward to a TV show 1 week in advance, and now there's none of that. But that's a beautiful thing, is to look forward to something that you can devote your attention to. But running is a tool that we can use to focus and clean our mind a bit.
Yeah, I was telling these guys the last linear TV I ever watched was Lost.
Nice.
And it like coordinated perfectly with middle school and high school every Wednesday night.
Yeah.
9:00. Turn in. What's going on that island?
Me too, man.
You watched Lost?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I was
great.
right with you. Yeah.
Yeah, just great. Cool, man. Well, yeah, pleasure to chat. I do want to, if people are not turned on to it already, Speed Demon Radio. Like I know you're known for the Substack, but I think the podcast, and it's impressive that a lot of it is stream of consciousness. I love the GoTA stuff too, but it's fantastic. Go check it out. And yeah, come what may, best of luck on Saturday and pulling for you for sure.
Thanks, Finn. That's a nice vote of confidence. Appreciate it.